Welcome to the Landco podcast. This is the year-round Waterfowl Hunter series, where we dissect the monthly activities of a successful waterfowl hunter. I'm your host and managing partner at Landco, John O'Reilly. Hey guys, this is John O'Reilly, the host of the Landco podcast series. And first off, I just wanted to say thank you for listening to the series. This is the last episode in the year-round Waterfowl Hunter. But more importantly, I want to apologize because the quality of this episode in terms of audio and video is awful. We ran into a few technical difficulties and the video didn't record and the high-end audio did not record. So luckily, we did have backup audio, but the quality is not very good. We thought about re-recording it, but there was a bunch of good stuff in there, so we just went with it. So again, apologize for the audio quality, and we won't let that happen again. So again, thanks for listening, and this is the last episode of the year-round Waterfowl Hunter. All right, hey guys, welcome back to the final episode of the year-round Waterfowl Hunter. Jody Graff, John O'Reilly. The last time we were here was right before season. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or close. So we would have been through September, going into October, I believe. So this is it, man. So just want to chat about the season, hopefully find out kind of what we learned throughout the year, what we did that worked, what we did that didn't work. And that's it, man. I have a feeling that your season was a little different than mine, just from the pictures I saw. So we'll let you guys know that Jody's got a little puppy there, and so he's on like high alert. Is the puppy okay at the moment?
Yeah, puppy's sleeping in front of the fireplace, man. We're good.
So do you train the dog yourself? Is that going to be a waterfowl dog?
Yeah, he's going to be a duck dog. I'll probably do a lot of the puppy work and try to get him ready for this fall. I got a couple of boys working for me. They all have dogs, so we're just going to try to work that into our day.
Nice.
Get some marks and stuff thrown, before it gets hot this summer. Try to get everybody ready.
Cool. Well, I'm actually, so Mike, your kids are young too. You must be crazier than me. But my twins are now turning 4. So I'm like, you know what, dude? I think we can finally get a dog. So we're like exploring that now. That could be a whole nother episode. We'll go into that later. So let's hop into it, man. It was a crazy season for us. So let's start. I think you guys started a couple weeks later than us, right? Are you into November when you start?
November 7th.
Okay. Yeah, we were like last week of October, and so we'll start in Illinois because it was excellent. I think I sent you a few pictures. It was the first week of season was incredible. Like I think we had 200 ducks within 10 days or so between my personal farm and the club. We had everything. We had mallards already. Like everything was working. They were doing it, and then literally it dropped off the face of the earth. Like duck hunting was the worst I've ever seen it. Did you guys have ducks early as well?
And it started in teal season.
Oh yeah, that's right. We don't do that. So that was in October for you guys, right?
It's the middle of September.
Okay.
Like September 10th, 15th, somewhere in there, we opened up the rents for 3 weekends. And anyway, we had, especially that last week, sort of in late September, we had pintails, gadwall, and we had shovelers and widgeon, and it was, you had to be really careful. It's easy enough to tell the difference between a teal and a wood duck, but an immature, or a teal and a wood duck, but an immature shoveler and a wood duck look kind of alike. And so it's tough. We had to really watch ourselves this year. It's not something that we're used to.
Right.
So then let's skip forward a few weeks. We got a big push of birds in the middle of October again. This is the 3rd year in a row that we've seen an early push. we got closer to Halloween and we had snow. Our youth weekend was like the week before Halloween, and it had one of the most epic youth weekend hunts that I've ever seen. I mean, we just had tons of ducks around.
Why do you think that was? So it's been consistently early push for, what did you say, 3 years?
3 years in a row, but we got big cold fronts, and the 2 years previous to this year, we had floods, and it's almost like the birds are following flood. And when the water showed up, the ducks showed up. But this year we had weather early, and we had a great push early. You know, we had a lot of mallards here. You know, a lot of our boys that were hunting during the youth weekend, you know, they killed straps of mallards, which you know isn't normal.
No.
With youth season being early, the opener for us, you know, November 7th, it was really good. Everybody was killing ducks early. We got a little push right there, you know, around Veterans Day. I had buddies in over the our firearms season, and we stacked up early. Man. Sounds a lot like what we saw.
And last year we had more mallards early. This year we just had a crazy number of ducks. But so that's cool. But then it changed for all of us, right? Because yours stayed good, right? You kept getting new ducks, right?
No.
Oh no.
No, we got that big push late in October, or middle of October, and you know, a good push of birds, a good push of mallards, you know, right there around the 10th of November. After that, man, we might have had a few trickle in, but it was tough to tell because the birds weren't flying until 4 o'clock. We had a really early ice event, and it just happened to fall on a full moon again. This is the second year in a row we've had ice early in a full moon. And when that happens, those birds don't move until the afternoon, and then it's hard to break them out of that. Like, they stayed in that pattern the rest of the season. And the morning hunting was really, you know, kind of slow. But, you know, the afternoons were pretty good. I know a lot of guys spent a lot of time in blind this year, and it was kind of tough. You know, later that we got into the season without, you know, picking up new birds, and we were losing birds and not picking them up like we normally would. But you look at the weather this year, and you know, up in Nebraska and South Dakota and parts of North Dakota that didn't really have a whole lot of snow cover. Didn't have, you know, their weather pattern was kind of like ours. So when it warmed up down here, it warmed up there too.
Right.
And we just didn't see that late push. But I think all of this kind of gets back to pressure. Those birds that are staying north because they have a better chance of surviving.
Right.
And not the weather conditions, the hunting pressure.
So you think there wasn't the pressure up there to push them down?
There wasn't the weather to push them down.
Oh God, okay.
And so, you know, more of the adult birds are going to ride that ice line, and stay as far north as they possibly can, and not migrate to put themselves at risk of hunting pressure.
Got it.
Now the hatchier birds are going to be more on a calendar, and that, you know, push we saw in November was, you know, likely, and we had a lot of young birds then, but those birds moved on through. They went on, you know, southeast Missouri and Arkansas and Tennessee and on down, and we didn't get that replacement, you know, push that we usually see.
Man, I guess I was probably just jealous because you were shooting some ducks, so I'd like see pictures of ducks, and like, because we literally, it dropped off the face of the earth. Like, I didn't shoot a duck for 3 weeks, not a single duck. So, but it's interesting that you say, so you got ice on a full moon. I'd actually never heard that. And because our ducks here follow the same exact pattern, but they were actually literally 10 minutes after shooting late. There was no movement. And it's a big, like, you know, people around here are trying to figure it out, you know. people blame it on the new preserves and all this stuff, but like there was no like solid answer on what happened because we had ducks. Like, there's I think it's Forbes or whoever it is that flies our rivers and gives us like estimates of how many ducks we had. And maybe we were down a little bit at certain times, but not much. Like we had the same number of ducks that we did last year for the most part. And when I say there was no ducks flying, I mean I'd go hunt in a spot that is lights out, and I wouldn't see a duck until 5 minutes after shooting light. Not a single duck. So nobody. It was frustrating, man. And I don't know if we did get an ice, but for us, we have open water because we have those ice eaters. But maybe there was something kind of weird like that that kind of messed up their pattern because once they got on it, it didn't change the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Even
it
when
sounds very similar.
It does.
To what we saw. And cloudy days, those birds are going to move a little earlier. If it's clear, they're going to move after shooting time. And I mean, even on the cloudy days with wind, when you expect them to get up and stir around a little bit, it was still really late when we were coming out.
It was so weird. It was literally the exact same. A few times, and I got so frustrated. Well, for me, it was a little different because I didn't get to go that was first week. When it was really good, I was just busy. And so then my wife tested positive, I think I did that. So I was on lockdown for like 2 weeks while people were still picking off a few ducks. By the time I got back, like it was non-existent. It was just over. So my season was awful. But a few days, like I was so like stir crazy at home with the kids that I'd load them all up and we'd go. Because one day, literally, there was like cloudy, like 100% cloud cover, and it was dark at really dark, like an hour before shooting light. I'm like, this is going to be awesome. Same thing. Didn't come till 5 minutes after. Like I couldn't even see. Like I'm not even sure I got a shot at shooting light. It was odd. It was a really weird year.
Well, I think that it was telling this year for me. Talking to the guys in the area, everybody had a really tough season around here.
Okay.
I and some of my clients, we had some really good hunts even late in the season. I had a pretty good season. But I think that there are a couple things that contribute to that. One of them is we were refugee ducks.
Yeah.
We had a spot where they weren't getting banged at, and they had open water and food and no hunting pressure. If it hadn't been for that refuge that was holding, a fair amount of ducks, we wouldn't have been shooting either.
Yeah.
There are the same story. Every little, every club I talk to, all the, my buddies would say, man, it was just, birds didn't move till late. We didn't get, birds later on in the season. We hunted the same birds for 6 weeks.
Yep.
We didn't get the weather that we needed. There's several things that, I think that are contributing to what we saw. But one being the weather pattern, kind of a mild, not that many significant weather events throughout the season. And two, we don't know, we don't really know what our duck numbers look like, the breeding population and what the duck hatch was like. There weren't a lot of the biologists, there wasn't the work that is normally done in Canada in the Great Pothole region to see how well our ducks did. So we may have been down in numbers, and also the hunting pressure. Man, it was dry around here this fall. And so every little hole that had water in it is because somebody was pumping it because somebody was going to hunt it.
Yeah.
And on those years, man, it just seems like we burn our ducks up faster and they get smarter faster.
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't use a spinning wing, but maybe the first 2 weeks of the season, because after that, man, they were awfully educated to it. I think hunting pressure is something that we don't often think about. Going back to let's say you're an average guy that got a blind to go hunt. Well, you don't have any of them places to hunt. It's not like you've got 3 other blinds to choose from, like a club would, or
you go there.
So you go to your blind, and especially if you're a weekend warrior, I mean, you get 2, maybe 3 days, Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday to hunt, and it's hard not to put a lot of pressure on, and still get the use of your property. So some of the smaller tracks are struggling with the fact that they're putting more hunting pressure on it than what it can handle. And when that happens, you run the ducks off and they don't come back until after shooting night.
Yeah, you're done. Yep.
And where I saw success, and this was in Missouri and Illinois and Tennessee and in Arkansas, talking to guys that had more consistent success this year, when everybody else is crying the blues about it being so bad. The guys who still did it are guys who are refuging their own ducks.
Right.
And managing the pressure and being strategic in their hunting plan. And, we did this whole podcast has been mostly about the habitat management, the development of the property. I have really, this year more than most, I hunted with my clients, and there's another piece to the puzzle here. And a part of it is making sure that our hunters are ready, making sure that they're doing everything they can to hide better and hunt better and hunt at the right times and hunt the right blinds and locations, and trying to do it in a strategic manner and manage the pressure, trying to move around enough that we're not just beating them up in one spot. And I just got back to Tennessee. I went down there to pick up the puppy, and guys that I've been working with down there in West Tennessee, we've got a place that's it's gorgeous, and pull up there, man, there's ducks everywhere, and literally ducks everywhere, and everybody else in the bottom is complaining they haven't seen a duck for 3 weeks, and these guys have thousands of them. And if it weren't for the refuge, those ducks would have been gone too.
Yep, 100%. So that's cool that you say that, because we did all this stuff, and it's like you hate to say like it was just awful, nothing we did helped. But the truth is that stuff does help. The refugee, like when I say it was bad, the first week of the season for here locally was good for everybody. But then for the most part, like most people around here, it fell off the face of the earth. I say that because I couldn't hunt that week. But the truth is, like at Double Hook Farm, it tailed off because we were holding ducks, right? So like when everyone else, they were gone, they were complaining, and they weren't shooting limits. Like it wasn't as good as it could have been, or it was in years past, but at least we had our ducks. Like we had food there, they were there. So we were hunting the same birds for another 2 weeks, and eventually they moved on. But that's another 2 weeks of the season you get, right? Because you have your own birds. And again, that's a club, which is a little different than what we're talking about, because those guys pay to go hunt. You can't just call them and say, "Hey, let's rest it for a week." You can, but it doesn't really go well. So all that stuff we're talking about, like all that food we have, all the like we try to rotate areas and not hunt mornings. It's not like we had our best year ever, but it was better than a lot of other places. Like we were shooting a handful of ducks when most people were shooting nothing, right? So same story. I think we had more. I'm sure our season was worse than yours. Like literally after that couple of weeks, it turned into like San Diego. Like it was like 45 degrees, 0 wind for like, it was like 3 weeks. It was crazy. Like water's like glass, but they were more similar than I expected. So that's weird. That's weird.
And I 146 days this year, and I would have gone more if there were better days. I mean, the days when you're just going to get your butt kicked. I didn't go on those days this year because it was tough.
It was tough,
without a doubt. We had to do some things that are a little outside the box. getting in vision bands, going out, where they're using it, and really hone in on trying to hunt pressured ducks. I've learned that it's it's pretty good hunt whenever ducks are new and they haven't been pressured, and everybody can shoot them. It's when they get pressured, when they start this, point A to point B, flying after shooting time, and not moving when they should. That's when you got to figure out how to kill them.
It's tough though.
And if they don't fly during shooting hours, it's hard to kill them.
It's nothing you can do.
It'll be interesting to kind of see, the next couple of years, what the experience is around, the same properties, because we're learning, we know as little as we'll ever know today. And every minute, every hour, every day, we're learning, how what we did is whether or not it's attractive to the ducks. We're figuring out, the areas that they're using the most. Some of them are expected, some of them are not. We did a lot of dirt work this year, and I had a lot of levees that were, dirt. There was no vegetation on them. Everything looked pretty manufactured, and the ducks were using it like crazy.
Really?
And we flooded some timber this fall, but there were thousands of ducks in this timber that it had never been flooded before. I thought it might take them a couple of years to kind of find it. It took them a couple of weeks.
No way. That was that new timber hole.
It was really impressive to see.
Didn't we talk about that? Didn't we talk about that? Was that timber hole? I think it was tighter than I expected it to be, but that was a project you did this year, right?
Yeah.
Is that where the whatever that was, the pans fell into that little creek?
Oh yeah. Yeah, my buddy Bo dumped a scraper.
Yeah,
going around a corner.
Was that at the same spot?
I've never seen one. It's wheels up in the air. That was pretty entertaining. That was a tough project.
Yeah,
we had to go a long way with the dirt. It took a long time. It was really cool. After all that work, all summer long, and the trials and tribulations, and the teamwork that went into that, to get to see thousands of greenheads.
Oh man, that's so awesome!
Water in there, and getting to shoot them.
You did shoot them year one. You went in there and shot them. Yeah. That's cool.
It was really cool. And some of the ag ground that we levied up last year. We didn't have wall to wall corn, and we have food plot corn that I planted in July. And we held ducks for 45 days, 50 days, but 20 of those days were well before season started.
Right.
And so we saw, what we did worked, but it was the hunting pressure that contributed to, making it hard to hunt. And we were hunting a particular pool once a week. You would think that those ducks would stay there all year.
You think that'd be perfect?
With getting hunted once a week.
Yeah.
Well, the neighbor hunted every day and hunted all day and was hunting pretty close to the property line where all these ducks were. And
yikes,
man, that was enough pressure to eventually run them off.
Yep.
Even though they weren't getting shot at on the property, that constant bang ended up running off, 5,000 or 6,000 birds that were there every day and only getting shot at once a week.
Sounds like you need to lease that. Sounds like you need to lease that pit.
Trust me, I tried.
Oh, yeah, that sucks. That's part of it, though, right?
Yeah.
So what worked this year that maybe hadn't in the past, or that you experimented with? Anything you did this year that was kind of different than you've done in the past that you'll do again next year?
Man, a lot of the ground that I'm taking care of right now, I've had for a little while.
Right.
And so the things are getting easier, like the ducks show up when they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
They're using the areas that they normally do. We're honing in on the specifics of each farm. But I can't stress how much or how important it is for us and for everybody in our area and probably everybody in listening in. This is vitally important to consistently provide that habitat year in and year out.
Mm-hmm.
Having good quality habitat. You don't get your corn in, you go to Milo or Jack Millet or buckwheat, or maybe it's moist soil management, and try. Because when if we don't have water or we don't have very much food, those birds are going to spend less time on your property.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're going to be there for a little while, see what you got, and if they can't get what they need, they're going to move on.
They're gone. Yep.
And these same ducks are coming back to the same places year in, year out. There's a lot of data that shows that the ducks are bouncing from Saskatchewan or somewhere in Canada, North and South Dakota area, and kind of bouncing around and coming down towards Missouri or North Missouri, and then on to Southeast Missouri, and then on to Northeast Arkansas, or down in Grand Prairie. It's just like the telemetry that they've been trying to record the last few years is really starting to shine some light on what the ducks are doing. And year in, year out, those ducks are coming and stopping by. Whether or not you have habitat, and good habitat is going to determine whether or not that duck stays.
Yep.
And as that older generation of ducks, has been to your property for the second, third, fourth, fifth year in a row, it becomes more consistent. And with that, those birds are bringing new birds to your property.
Yep.
And they've got people ducks following them every year. And so the more you can imprint the birds on your property, the more refuge you can give them, the more duck stays you can provide, in your food sources. The longer you can keep your water on, the more water you can keep open. That every little bit is going to help the following year.
Yep.
And a lot of people pull their boards at the end of the year, and I want those ducks here again, on the northward migration.
Yeah.
And I hope that we'll pick up some new prospects next fall whenever they come back through.
Yep.
Because it's obvious that these ducks are stopping in the same places on the way down and on the way up, and it's getting really interesting. Some of the information that they have out there on just how predictable the ducks are.
They are. So that happens, and
more
that's
predictable than what everybody thinks.
I think so too. I mean, what happens then is you get little spots that have proven that they're, probably no different than spots that you manage, that they're proven to get ducks every year. And those little zones become little hot spots. People trying to start picking off land all around there. It becomes interesting when you create little spots like that. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that yet? Like, are people trying to buy land around like these areas that you created yet?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Man, duck hunters are passionate.
True story.
Duck hunters are competitive. Duck hunters are cynical. Like there's nothing about this sport that's competitive. Whether it's with your own buddies or your neighbors, we like that.
True story.
That's what drives us.
Yeah.
It makes you want to be better than your neighbor, better than the guy across the road. And so
it happens. I mean, here
it happens a lot.
Here
it happens a lot, and the people that have been good at identifying those hot spots and identifying the lines where the ducks are flying all the time and buying ground underneath them. Those guys guys are doing good.
They are doing good.
Even on tough years, those guys are doing good.
They're doing good both, at least here, both in terms of duck hunting and in terms of like return. Like we've seen those areas. There's areas here that have over the years proven themselves, and it could be a difference in 100% in price, literally twice as much within 3-4 miles. I mean, if you're in that area, prices are double what they are if you're 3-4 miles down the river. It's that big of a difference. So if you can kind of create those areas, it's financially it's rewarding as well.
Right.
But
I get a lot of appraisers that call me about WRP comps and stuff, and like, well, on paper these two look exactly the same. Why is this one worth twice as much as this one?
Mm-hmm.
And the location and its proximity to a refuge or high use area, that is a huge contributor.
Mm-hmm.
The other part of that is a kill history. Duck hunters are cynical. If they know they can kill 600 ducks, and they've been killing 600 ducks at that club for the last few years,
yep,
that helps them, give them the confidence to go, and people will spend more if they know what to get.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times you got to figure out how to hunt a place before you can have that kind of success. It's easier when somebody else has already figured it out for you.
Yep, when the ducks are going to be there, at least in the area, that helps.
Mm-hmm.
So, what we did this year that was amazing. I think I texted you because I had tried it before. We planted sorghum, like you said, man, and it was unreal. So I may have just planted the wrong kind before. Because literally, Peter, my partner, 5 miles away, I think he planted like the red seed sorghum. Didn't touch it. Literally, it's all still there. We planted that like white waterfowl mix. I think it was from Hancock's, and it was the first thing they touched. Literally before the millet, before the buckwheat, swimming through corn to get to it. And by week, there was whole cells of it that by week 2, it was cleaned out.
Yeah,
it was amazing. Unfortunately, the other cells they found them, but it'd be after shooting light. But they wanted that over everything we had. It was unreal. And I planted it too late. Like it wasn't green when we flooded it, but it was not too far from green. You know what I mean? So it wasn't perfect, and they still nailed it. So it was that Hancock's. They call it bird resistant. Like I don't know how the hell that works, but it did amazing. It was lights out. So I bet next year, depending on what we have, because a few of these we've sold, I bet I will double what we planted in that.
Yeah.
And not many people plant that stuff here, man. Like I don't know why, but it worked incredibly.
Man, everybody gets so wound up about corn. Oh, I gotta have corn. I gotta have corn.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there aren't that many days during the season, especially one like this, where the ducks are after high energy food. Like that's not what they want on a 40-degree day and no sun and 10-mile-an-hour wind.
Yep.
They're not keen on corn. And we had a lot of mild days this year, and without a doubt, those ducks were feeding through the moist soil on all of the properties that I take care of.
Okay, I was going to ask you that.
They were smashing the moist soil long before they ever touched the corn. Like there's so much corn left out there on a lot of these properties that they were holding a bunch of honkers, because the honkers are, we've got the weather now.
Yep, same story.
High energy food source.
Yeah.
And, there just weren't that many days where corn was king. They would eat it, especially on, when there's ice on,
mm-hmm.
when the wind's blowing, it's, 20 degrees or below, those ducks are almost solely working.
Yeah.
We didn't have that many days this year.
We didn't have hardly any.
So I often challenge people, not only my clients, but the guys in Tennessee I'm consulting for, and the guys up here that I try to trying to help them diversify their food sources. If we have moist soil, if we have a high energy food source, whether that's acorns or corn, if we have all four habitat types that the ducks are going to use throughout the year, we want a little bit of each of them. We want that diversity so that we can plan to hold ducks early in the year, middle of the season, late in the season, and in the spring, and try to provide everything that they need in one spot so that we can plan to hold more ducks year round, or throughout the whole season. You put all your eggs in one basket, and then we have plant everything to corn, and we have a mild year like this. Well, ducks probably not going to use it that much because they don't need it. I mean, they're looking for moist soil or something else other than the high carbohydrate food source.
Yep. Yeah, we saw the same thing. The only thing that I'll probably experiment with this next year is we have all that stuff. We have diversity, but most of them are within the same wetland, right? So we'll have corn, we'll have buckwheat or millet around the outside. So we couldn't necessarily target them based on what we knew they were eating. We're hunting the same wetlands, whether it was corn, millet, sorghum, they're all in the same spot. So it might be cool to test hey, let's have a pure millet wetland, and when they're hitting that, we know where to go, right? I'm not saying that'll work or not, but we haven't done much of that. Usually we'll literally throw the buffet in the same wetland, and they're going to be there all year. But it might be worth a shot at some point.
So with your different food sources there, I would challenge everyone to put those food sources at the right elevations.
Mm-hmm.
Put your moist soil on lower elevations where it's going to be harder to plant corn. Put buckwheat kind of in the middle where it's got some time to cure out, but you can have short water on it while you're pumping up. And it gets me back to another point. Staging the flooding of your property in the fall can have a huge advantage. A lot of clubs don't have the opportunity to pump and slowly bring the water level up throughout the season. A lot of guys will pump pump the property full on opening day, and that's the water they got for the rest of the year. That really takes your buffet line and puts it out once.
Unless you're, it's a little different.
Weeks.
It's a little different though, because a lot of your stuff is river stuff where you're flooding. Some of your fields are hundreds of acres that you flood.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So a big one here, and again, not the river stuff, and some of the river clubs are the same way, but these cells are 8, 10 acres. They're not very big. And a lot of them are you're talking about those man-made areas. We've got wetlands that are tabletop, right? So those, we can slowly bring those up a little bit. I'm not sure how much it helps us. But the big ones you're talking about where we can't plant everything at the same time, those will tend to bring up a little slower, like you're saying. But a lot of these here, it doesn't help us that much. Because literally, you could look across the wetland. Every ear of corn is 4 foot up across the whole wetland. So it's okay, here comes waterfowl season. You fill it up and see what happens. I don't know if that's good or bad. In a lot of those clubs, like you say, it's corn is king, and that's what a lot of people want to see. So that's what they have. And I'm not exactly sure that's the best, but a lot of clubs here, that's how they operate. Corn, tabletop, fill it up, opening day. That's it.
Well, I would advise against that whenever you have the opportunity. Right. You can manipulate water levels and stage a flooding where you've got lower elevations that have different food sources. Put that under the water at the beginning of the season with ducks that are more likely to be feeding on that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the water level up another 6 inches. The ducks aren't going to be eating the corn in October.
No.
I mean, there's no reason to give them the corn in October, because you put 4 foot of water in there so you can get, or 3 foot of water in there so you can get to the ears of corn, and they can't feed anything on the bottom.
Right.
A duck can feed 18 inches,
Mm-hmm.
Below the surface of the water, and that's it. Unless it's, corn height, or let's say milo or sorghum.
Yep.
Unless you float it right up to the ears or the head.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and it's corn or nothing.
Or you don't have a very good season.
Or you don't have a very good season.
Yeah.
No, it's obvious that the weather is king.
Well, so
and the weather is going to dictate year in, year out, and we don't know that schedule.
We don't. But
so a little crystal ball we could look into. And
I know, but so you some of the stuff is making more sense. I mean, a lot of these clubs, including a lot of our stuff is all corn. And then people are bitching that the ducks aren't leaving the refuges and the preserves here. But those are the places that had that moist soil stuff and all that natural vegetation. So maybe that was one of the reasons they didn't leave. Maybe they didn't need to.
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about that. It does seem like with that early freeze that we had this year, that the percentage of corn, those areas, the east side of Fountain Grove, was really good early in the season.
Mm-hmm.
But later on in the season, man, things fell off.
Yeah.
Because it got more mild, and they just kind of got out of the pattern. And it started using the moist soil. And on the fresh water, I noticed that this year I had a pool that I brought up too quickly. I brought the water level up too quick in this pool.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I brought it up too quick is, one, it's a brand new pool. We had never pumped it before. Dude, we had, 5, 6, 7,000 ducks in there every day. And they were just smashing all the food. And so I was trying to stage it up and keep them in there using it.
Yeah.
Well, in the matter of 3 weeks, I put, too much water on it. They smashed all the food, and they left. And then they took off whenever they got all the moist soil eaten. All the corn still on the ear.
Right.
They didn't touch it. They didn't touch it. They ate all the moist soil, and then went to the next pool that was getting fresh water.
Mm-hmm.
And rode the elevation line up and smoked every bit of the moist soil that was in it. Then they moved to another pool and just kept moving around where there was fresh food and fresh water. Huh. It was really obvious this year. I watched it happen, contributed part of it, but I think that
might have been happening here too.
Well, what I'm going to do next year on those series of pools that are right there, I'm gonna bait them. That's a terrible. I did not say that.
Yeah, that came out.
I'm gonna bait them into coming to these pools by when I put water on it.
Right.
So I'm gonna pulse or put 6 or 7 inches of water on a pool, and once the birds start using it, I'm gonna stop pumping it. And I'm going to switch it to another pool, and I'm going to hunt them in that pool all week long. Okay. And as that water level's coming up over there, hopefully they'll start using it.
And hop over there.
And once they start using it, we'll start hunting it. And then I'll start pumping over here again.
Yeah, kind of hop them around a little bit.
And try to minimize the pressure on that one pool. After you go in and bang at them 6 or 7 times, over even 3 or 4 weeks, they still get banged at enough that they don't want to come back.
Nope.
And so if you spread that out, and we're encouraging them to move, and we're trying to make them more predictable and put water in this one this week, put water in that one next week, and we'll follow them. We'll just keep following them back and forth and try to reduce the pressure on the pool. And that all gets back to that. There's a lot of contributors to it, but we got to hunt. And this is more important today, I think, than it was 20 years ago. We have to hunt today for triple. And we have to be thinking about how to minimize pressure and take the restraints off of our ducks, because we're training them to fly after dark.
Yep.
We're training them not to come back to properties until after dark, because if you do, you're going to get shot. And they catch on. In some years, they catch on quicker than others. This year, they caught on pretty quick.
Very quick. Too quick.
And very similar to what you said, it's like the bottom fell out of it. It was just, what's really good? Nothing. We heard a lot of that around here too.
Huh.
A lot of the clubs just didn't have much luck in the first couple of weeks because their properties couldn't handle the pressure.
Right. Well, I'm going to blame it mostly on weather, mainly because I'm hoping it's better next year.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they don't come back and just fly again at 5 o'clock at night.
Right.
So let's land on the weather.
Get a month or a month and a half before they get into that pattern.
Right. Yeah.
Have a chance at it.
Yep. And get some new birds every once in a while.
Yeah. We're not asking for much.
You wouldn't think so.
Maybe a third push or a fourth push. I mean, not asking for much.
I'm asking for a later season. Every year, a duck show up right after it's over. But that's probably also because they're smart as well, right? Here, all the hunters and big pushes for we need to get DNR to push the season back, or a split season, wherever they're fighting for. But it's you're probably right. It would make more sense here, but then they'll probably show up 2 weeks later,
Yeah. Well, the ducks are pushing back north right now.
Are they?
Last week, I saw a pretty good influx of mallards and pintails. I was in southeast Missouri Friday and hunted there, and a lot of the mallards were already gone. I got to West Tennessee. I hunted over near the Big Sandy, and it was pretty tough over there. There just wasn't a whole lot of birds flying, much like up here.
Yep.
But a lot of their ducks had left. I got to West Tennessee, and those guys had ducks, but they had a refuge. But there were a lot of folks in that bottom that hadn't been killing very many birds because they just weren't there.
Right.
And so I think that once our seasons close, those birds know that they can retreat, and we're training them to move further north earlier every year. In their return flight, to escape the pressure. And I don't know that it's going to get any better.
Don't say that.
Move the season later.
I think you're right.
These birds are getting banged out from September to into January.
Yep. Canada to Arkansas, the whole way down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that makes all the stuff that we do even more, right? And those guys that are doing all this stuff, even if they're not banner years where they're record harvest, at least they're still shooting ducks. At least they're still getting ducks and holding ducks for a while. So in one sense, it's sort of depressing to see this happen. But in the other sense, it's hey, if you don't do this, you might not be duck hunting at all, right?
Right.
Or it might not be worth it.
Yeah. It was like quail hunting got in the late 90s or mid 90s over here.
Yeah.
And couldn't get into enough quail to make a duck dog or make a quail dog. You just couldn't go walk around for 2 days and kick up 2 cubbies and make a dog. I mean, it's just really, it got so hard that a lot of guys quit. I was one of them. Me and my dad, we quit quail hunting and started duck hunting.
Yeah.
And if we don't, I'm afraid if we don't change some of the some of what we're doing, it's gonna get even tougher.
Yeah.
Tougher and tougher, over the next 20, 25 years.
And you think it's, you think it's pressure where you're at, or do you think you're already on the wrong foot because they've been pressured north of you? Right? Do you think you get new birds at your place that are already flying after dark? Not dark, after shooting light.
Yeah. So I think a lot of our problem is the amount of pressure they see once they get to our area.
Okay.
Because from Fountain Grove to Grand Pass, they're getting that.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, there's a lot of waterfowl developments, and the National Wildlife Refuge and 2 conservation areas. I mean, there's a ton of habitat there, and that's why they're there. Mm-hmm. But they're getting banged out a lot. So I do think that it is the pressure that we're seeing here. Not necessarily they got banged at so hard in South Dakota that the gun shy wants to show up.
Right.
And that's what I said earlier too. We might have. There were a couple of times when I thought I saw some new ducks. Hunting in December, but man, it wasn't very many. It wasn't ever a significant like, oh man, we had a really good day, and they all acted like ducks.
Right.
Saw a bunch of flight birds. It wasn't ever that.
Well, that's why I asked, because it's the same thing.
I wonder. Yeah. I wonder if we did pick up birds, if they didn't fall right in line with the pressured birds and never really give us a shot at it.
So that's why I asked, because I think they fly here every 2 weeks and give us numbers, and like, oh, we got a great new push of whatever, mallards. It's like, no, we didn't. It's like, I haven't seen an extra bird in 2 weeks. So we're curious. It's like, man, maybe they're just all banged up. And like you said, they're falling in line with those ducks that are already flying. At some points, it's literally a minute at the shooting line. A minute. I mean, it gets frustrating. And we had wetlands that would pile up. 5,000 ducks. Not a single one before shooting light. Not a one. But whatever. You hope you get a bad weather day, and this year we didn't get any, So
you said something earlier, and I'm curious.
Is it about my hair?
No.
This will be the last podcast with hockey hair. I promise.
That's impressive. Yeah. You said something about try not to hunt mornings. Is that to reduce pressure?
So they weren't not hunting mornings. They were not going to the wetlands before sunup.
Oh.
So and we would rest the wetlands. You know what? I take that back. We didn't close our wetlands in the morning at all. You can always go there, and this was our farm manager's kind of his research from what he was told, and I think it has worked a little bit. That once you kick them out in the dark, they're more likely to either not come back or to come back after shooting light. And last year it worked really, or maybe a couple of years ago. The last few years it worked really, really well. This year was a weird year, and it just sucked in general. So I don't know how much we learned from that. But the past 2 years, I feel like it helped. So we would not let people go hunt a food source before sunup. Mm-hmm. You heard of anyone else doing that?
No.
It's caught on over here. I mean, we're not the only people doing it here. It's a lot of the clubs along the Illinois River, same thing. They won't let their guys go out till sunup.
Really?
Yep. They say they come back earlier when you don't spook them up at dark.
You guys hunting until sundown in the afternoons?
Monday, Wednesday. I think we have 2 or 3 rest days. So Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we do not hunt food, flooded food in the afternoon. Yep. And this year in years past, that was fine. The 3 rest days. This year it could use more. But what do you do? For us, it's a club, and once you kind of set those, that's the rules for the year. But we were given 3 rest days. And so a guy literally a mile down the road has a private farm that's much smaller. And for as long as I've known him, he hunts Saturdays. That's it. And he was pounding them, man.
Yeah.
He was pounding them.
Yeah.
So
it's pressure management.
Yeah.
He knows he's got a 1 day a week spot.
Mm-hmm.
If he could have that good of hunts every day of the week, he'd probably be doing it. But he can't have that good of hunts unless he only does it one day a week.
Yep. And so we'll kill more ducks than him because we're hunting more. But man, his hunts on Saturdays are lights out better than any hunt that we have had that week or whatever. So you're right. It's pressure, but
so depending on how often you want to hunt, you just need 7 properties.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. We've had that discussions like, hey, instead of buying 400 or 500 acres, let's buy like 5 100-acre properties.
I hunt them each 1 day a week.
1 day a week, right? We even talked about getting because all those new the cell cams, like the trail cams, that send them right to your picture. It's like, you know what? Let's get 4 or 5 wetlands in the area and just stick a cam right on our shooting hole, and let's just not even go until they're there, right? Until they're showing up consistently during shooting light. Let's just leave it. That would be kind of awesome.
So,
but again, that's private stuff. It's different than a club. Club, you kind of have to.
Yeah. Here's
the rules. Go do it.
Right. I refuged some areas this year that we hadn't before, and it was really interesting seeing how those ducks worked, how they moved. It was always really hard to see how many ducks were in there because they never left.
Right.
They were always in there. And every now and then the eagle would swoop down in there and you'd see 5,000 or 6,000 get up and go right back down. But it's the birds that aren't pressured, if they have a safe place to go, they just act different.
100%.
They, we also had some properties that we did a 1 o'clock closure on. So at 1 o'clock, you quit hunting.
Yeah.
And get out of the pool. And we don't go back into those areas after 1 o'clock and try to give them refuge, a temporal refuge. And instead of spatial, give them a temporal refuge. Yeah. And the ducks were in in those wetlands or in those units in the afternoons because they didn't get shot at in the afternoons.
Right.
And instead of flying up 5 after 5, they were flying up 5 after 1. And the Missouri Department of Conservation has several managed areas that fly on those same rules. Grand Pass is 1 o'clock close.
Yeah.
Sometimes the best hunting you see at Grand Pass is the last hour of the day.
Yep, noon to 1.
Because those birds we trained them.
Yeah.
Fly at 1.
Yep.
But some of them, aren't that smart, or have their clocks turned back, and they get shot at noon because, and a lot of days it's the weather that will get those birds up early.
Yeah.
If it's cloudy and the wind's blowing,
they'll be there an hour early.
They'll fly early.
Yeah. You know what you should do? You should have a club that you just push it back 10 minutes every day, and hopefully they never catch on. Right? So what? Opening day we're up until 10. That's it. And then it's 10:15, 10:30. And maybe
would that work?
And maybe you'll just you're probably right. But maybe you'll just stay ahead of them, right? So the last 15 minutes is always incredible.
I'm trying to do the math in my head.
I don't think it works. I don't think it gets all the way there. You'd have to do 2 or 3 minutes a day.
I like it.
Yeah, thank you.
I like it.
All right, dude. Well, we're going an hour. I'm trying not to go this far. Series is over. What did we miss? Anything?
I don't think so. We talked about a lot.
For sure.
It's crazy to kind of think that it's already over and we're starting again. Starting again.
That's the deal. We started in January. So literally a month ago, a year ago, we started. We were already doing stuff for the next year. So
right.
we're doing stuff for next year right now. It's part of it.
Yeah, it's I'm still counting. I still want to kill some stuff. So, like,
you guys are still in the Canadian season. See, we're out. We're done. Yeah.
And for whatever reason, man, we've had a lot of candidates this year. Had some epic hunts, like spectacular hunts.
Yeah.
Some of the best goose hunting that I've seen.
Nice.
In the last 5 or 6 years.
Nice.
But it seems like that happens. The tough duck season, and
they reward you with some good goose
hunting. Up a little bit with the honkers. It seems like you should get maybe one of the two, and it'll help make it easier to swallow.
You know what? I gave up this year. Like, people have been shooting up until it closed the club. Like, people were having good luck. And I was just like, I was burnt, man. I went too many days that it was awful. I was just like, screw it, man. I'm done. I'll go next year. Which turned out to burn me, but whatever. That was my attitude this year. Well, cool. Well, thanks for joining us, man. It was awesome. I don't know what we'll do next year, but we'll certainly have to catch up a few times on individual topics or whatever we land on.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Come over and see me this spring.
Deal. When you're doing a couple projects.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll start in a couple weeks. So.
I think so.
We're good anytime after that.
Deal. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for joining us, and you guys who listen, thanks for listening. And we'll be back at you next year with different series, different topics.